Hello everyone, Derek back again. I'm here to bring you another video for our Sons of Anarchy countdown to the final season. We are less than a month away from the premiere on September 9th. Definitely getting exciting. Definitely a lot more information coming out about each of the upcoming episodes. Definitely a lot of good plot lines, a lot of shocking developments are going to be coming up in the final season. I'm really looking forward to it. In order to help us get there, I'm going to be doing some episode reviews as well as some prediction videos for the 7th season. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to do season 1 review episodes for Capybara, which was the 11th episode, and The Sleep of Babies, which was episode 12. Both episodes just really together form like one big story that basically ends in tragedy. And I really think that they're great episodes. Big spoilers in this episode review if you have not seen this episode. You're just catching up on Sons of Anarchy. You're getting ready for the final season because it was something you wanted to do. Don't watch this video because there's a lot of spoilers involved with it. There really are. Okay, so basically, in this episode, again, a lot of stuff happens. The very beginning of the episode, Bobby gets arrested for the murder of Brennan Hefner, which is a very, definitely very shocking scene. A lot of the club members, I don't know if it's not necessarily that they didn't see it coming, because I guess they didn't, because, they figured that the hit went off without a hitch, and it turns out that it didn't. There was a witness. So Clay and the group needs to be there for Bobby because he got arrested. And they basically call the lawyer up, which his name is Rosen, and basically get a case started. Now, what happens is that when they gather up at the table, Opie's not there. And they're like, well, wait a minute, where's Opie at? And there's a lot of concern about it because they start going over the possibilities and they realize that the only people there were Jax, Opie, and Bobby. And Bobby's in prison, Jax is there, and I don't think they would ever think Jax would rat. Opie is not there, and we have to remember, Opie spent 5 years in prison, definitely has had a hard time readjusting to his family life and for them, and the club has their suspicions. They think that maybe he was the one that ratted on Bobby. And there's a lot of, tempers definitely flare, and it definitely got heated. This is like the first time where you can see their brotherhood really starting to shatter. And, Tig basically was saying, hey, if he did it, then we got to take care of it. And Piney, of course, wants to defend his son. And, he tries to tell him, he's like, hey, the only reason why Opie's not here is because he has no idea what's going on. We need to bring Opie in and see what's going on. And the club realizes that they're not going to jump to a conclusion too quickly, because if you do, then you find out that the person might be innocent and then you just killed an innocent guy. So they're willing to wait it out, let him come back and figure everything out. So now along the way, the episode basically, there's more and more indications that make you think that Opie's a rat in regards to the club. Jax goes over to his house and finds out that Opie and his family were taken away in the middle of the night, not in handcuffs, so that's definitely a suspicious thing. And they were taken away in black SUVs, which is again like that signature, vehicle for, law enforcement agencies. And Juice, who is, Juice is pretty much like the guy who can get information. He tells Clay that he looked up some of Opie's bills, and it turns out some of them have been paid. So there's definitely a lot of suspicions. And what Stahl is trying to do is she is trying to set Opie up as a rat, so that way he will turn. Because if they let him go, what happens to rats? They get killed. Anybody that snitches on a club or anybody that snitches on some kind of gang, and there's like a code in like almost any criminal enterprise that you see. You rat, you're dead. And I think that she's basically trying to scare Opie into ratting anyways, because otherwise he's screwed. And she's also trying to persuade Donna to, rat as well, like leave Opie in the club and, come to their side. And, definitely very intense. Opie's definitely resilient. He's not going to, rat on the club. He is a dedicated member. He always has been. I think he always will be, and, Stahl tries to push and push, but Opie has so much faith in his brothers. He has so much faith in the club that they would believe him. And Donna, is a little more tempted at some points. However, what happens is that Opie's mother, Mary Winston, comes back into the picture. Basically, she has to go pick up the grandkids, Opie and Donna's kids, because Donna's family doesn't want to be anywhere near the situation. Now, Mary abandoned Opie at a very young age, And well, you see different stories. Like she claims that Opie ran away, but anyways, she hasn't been a part of his life really. And Donna sees this, like whenever she comes to pick up the kids, Mary's like, "Oh, what'd my son do now?" And "Oh, you guys, this and this and that." Mary was never like a club type of woman. You know, in anything she would have rather had Piney not be a member of it. But Donna doesn't want to see her family end up like Opie's. She wants to stand by her man. She loves Opie. She loves her kids. She wants to stick with her family. And that's why she doesn't abandon them. That's why she doesn't rat. That's why she doesn't tell Opie to. They're basically released, and Opie is basically warned, like, hey, you're probably gonna get killed. And Opie says, no, I have faith in my brothers. And of course, they also know, like, they show him the mugshot, basically say, hey, you're probably gonna get arrested for the murder of Brendan Hefner. He goes, hey, I'll see you then. He has faith that everything's gonna play out well. Now, he gets back to the clubhouse, and basically he explains everything. Club seems to believe him, but what ends up happening is Tig ends up searching his truck and his cell phone and finds that there are bugs, like there's microphones that they use to record information and spy. And Opie had no idea about them. That's another way that they were able to try to convince the club that he was going to turn, was that they implanted those bugs. So now the club really thinks that he did. Well, just Clay, and like basically Clay did not let this out into the rest of the pool. Like he did not tell Jax about what he found. The only person that he trusted was Tig. And basically, like, Tig and Clay really have a closer connection than some other members because they kind of grew up together in some ways. Like Clay almost acts like a father for Tig. Tig was very young, and Clay was like like maybe his age now whenever he first joined. So Tig definitely looks up to Clay. You can definitely see that. And basically he's seen as a trusted lieutenant. He is a sergeant at arms, which means that basically, like, if someone tries to kill Clay, Tig is the one that's expected to like step in front, like take a bullet or defend Clay, which is what he did successfully at the bar when the Mayans tried to kill him. So he does his job well. Clay can trust him, and Clay knows that when stuff like this gets out, it ruins a charter, which I can understand. If you have people that are ratting, or you have suspicions of that, and everybody finds out about it, it can definitely test loyalties. It can get the wrong people killed. It can get people taking sides, and it ends up. So I can understand where Clay is coming from, but because of the fact that he doesn't really tell people, he's taking it upon himself to make the executive decision to kill Opie, which he tells Tig to do without telling anybody else. He trusts Tig to do this. Also in Capybara, there is another event going on. Wendy returns to Charming before she goes to her halfway house to continue her rehab. So she goes in to see Abel, and basically she and Jax kind of reconnect in some ways. And you see them, like their relationship starts to, it brings them back to those days when they were happily married. I'm assuming there was some happiness in their marriage before everything turned to, crap. So basically it's she gets to see Abel, and Jax forgives Wendy in many ways, and the reason why is because he realizes that he's no better than Wendy when it comes to this. If anything, he was set to be like how Tig is as a father. Like Tig has two daughters, Dawn and Fawn, which we find out in the next episode. He doesn't really see them that much, which we see later how his relationship is with them. But he doesn't really, interact with them. He's not that active father like Jax is to Abel and Thomas. And later on in the series when Thomas is born. And like you see that. Like Jax was willing to just let the kid go and leave Wendy with him. And that was just, he blames himself just as much for all that happening. So I think that's why he's more forgiving for Wendy. He lets her come in and hold Abel, and they talk, and they seem to almost look like a happy family. And Tara looks in on that and is like, worrying about Jax going back with Wendy, because again, there's different feelings. Like Tara's feelings for Jax are starting to rekindle. So it's definitely a big thing. And Gemma again is remembering just how much Tara broke Jax's heart, that she's willing to let Wendy even come back into Jax's life. Like she basically tells, Wendy, like, hey, You want your son back? I mean, you want my son back as a husband? She goes, yeah. Like Wendy wants her family back, which is understandable. So Gemma seems to be willing to put that back together because I think she sees Wendy as, not as much of a threat as Tara is. And I think that matters. So definitely a lot happened in Capybara that does go over into the sleep of babies. And what happens mostly in this episode is, big things. I mean, I love the beginning and the end because the beginning shows various people in bed waking up. And most of the club members wake up next to people that, women that they were with the night before. Jax wakes up next to Tara. I think Opie wakes up with his family, or Dawn, at least if I'm not mistaken. And then I think Clay and Gemma were with each other. And at the end they show the same scenes of people, getting ready to go to bed or something, but how different it was. And what ends up happening is during this episode, Clay plans on basically getting he doesn't really want to sell to the Mayans because he doesn't fully trust them, and he kind of wants to, play both sides off the other. He's thinking, hey, have the Niners come in and kill Alvarez and the other Mayans, so it kills two birds with one stone. It prevents him from lying to Alvarez and going back on his deal that made peace, and it also keeps his relationship secure with the Niners. So basically, he sets that plan into motion, tells Leroy about it, and of course Leroy, isn't, having it too much of it. He agrees to it, but you find that, he definitely does something different. So during this, Clay and Jax go to meet Alvarez at one spot, and he sends Opie and Tig to another spot in order to collect the money. Because that way, because if the ATF is watching them, they don't see money for guns. So Clay tells Tig, hey, while you're there, do what we said we would do. Take care of Opie. Shoot him. Find a way. That way they could blame it on the Niners and that way and the Mayans, and it's not a club, that way they wouldn't, blame the club. Like the secret stays. Well, they go to these meets and the Niners attack early. Basically to kind of send Sam Crow a message, like, hey, we're not just someone you can play around with, That was basically Leroy's point, which we find out in the next episode. He wasn't really doing that in order to like kill the Suns. I don't think. But several Mayans and several Niners do get killed in this engagement, and in fact, Tig almost gets killed by one of the Niners because where they go, basically, there are dolls all over, and Tig has fear of dolls, and he's basically freaking out. The Niner almost gets him, but Opie comes behind and shoots him. And there's a moment when Tig has the shot. He can take the shot, but he can't. He can't bring himself to do it. He can't bring himself to kill the man that just saved his life. So definitely a lot of things going on, in this this whole entire scene. So then what ends up happening on the other front is Abel is actually coming home. They actually determine that he's healthy enough to go home. So they're going to throw a big reunion, coming home party to have this family come together. Now, again, at this time, we're still having like a Wendy, Jax, Tara love triangle thing going on here that basically is coming to a head. Like, Wendy actually challenges Tara, basically saying, "Hey, like, leave my man alone." And Tara's like, "Hey, I'm with him now." Like they basically are at each other's, not literally, but basically like they're challenging each other. Like, who does Jax love more, Wendy or Tara? When each one thinks they have a good chance with him. And basically, Gemma is actually trying to use Wendy to get back at Tara. And like she can see that. Like she can see that Gemma's kind of like going after Tara by having Wendy come back because, the feelings started to rekindle. And, Wendy just, Wendy just wants to put her family back together, and it makes sense. So she's just trying to get her relationship back in place with Jax. But, Gemma ultimately, I don't think she sees either of them as suitable women for Jax at this time. So again, there's definitely a lot going on. And in fact, at the reunion party, Jax kind of recognizes, he tries to play the mediator on both of them. Because Tara basically comes into the party and starts, rubbing up all over him and kissing him and everything. And you can totally tell that it's making Wendy visibly uncomfortable. which is understandable. I mean, a lot of us have been in that kind of situation. You see an ex, doing something with somebody else, and it brings back bitter memories. So basically, Jax takes Tara aside and says, "Hey, don't do that in front of Wendy. She's detoxing right now. She could easily relapse." And Tara gets ticked. And like basically, I think that it's because I think that she wants to be the main person in Jax's life, but I think that I think she's feeling at that moment that Jax really is not totally convinced on Tara. And I think that was something that Tara was upset about, and that's why she reacted the way she did. At least that's how I look at it. Because I mean, I think that she just sees that Jax is not really committing to either one of them, and she wants Jax, for herself. And if she can't have him, then she doesn't want to deal with this. And I think just everything that happened comes at a head, and she leaves. She storms out of there. Also at this time, this was the time where they were going to try again to take out Opie. Now, earlier in the episode, there was a scene between Unser and Hale, because Hale actually finds out that the witness is not Opie, but that it is the 17-year-old girl named Aviqua Michaels, I believe her name is, who witnessed it. Now, he saw this right before Stahl kicked him out of the investigation, because Hale basically warned Stahl not to do it like this. Don't set up Opie like this, because you're going to get innocent people killed, you're going to get people hurt. Hale's all for taking down the Suns, but he wants to do it without any bloodshed. You know what I mean? That's understandable. He feels like, hey, I'm not supporting the Suns, and he's conflicted because he doesn't want to support the club, but he also doesn't want to see anybody get hurt, and that's why he's in this jail cell with Unser and basically says, hey, I have something I might want to tell you, and if I tell you, well, it betrays my badge because you're not supposed to be telling people who the secret witness is and everything. But if he doesn't, then someone's going to get hurt. And he eventually does tell Unser that Opie's not a rat. Well, of course, Clay sends Tig out to go do the hit. Now, what ends up happening, though, is Opie ends up taking the car home, because Opie usually drives the truck. But Donna wants to take the truck in order to come back and help Gemma. She's very thankful for the way everything's worked out. She wants to come back and help Gemma clean up. You can see that she's starting to become a lot stronger, with her connections towards the club. She sees that maybe it is the best way in order to help support them. So it's definitely a nice moment for Opie and Donna. So Donna ends up taking the truck. Now Tig ends up stealing an SUV in order to do the hit, because he wants to make it seem like it was gang activity, not a biker. So what ends up happening is Unser comes and tells Clay about the witness, but it's too late, because he's already sent Tig out. So Clay tries calling, but of course Tig left his cell phone behind in the at his bike, and he pulls up behind the light where basically Donna stops the truck, and Tig thinks it's Opie in the truck, and he's far away. And we find out later in the episode why he did it this way. He ends up pulling out a gun and he fires into the truck, and it turns out that he kills Donna rather than Opie, which Tig freaks out about, drives away really quickly. And I mean, the scene at the end when Opie sees his dead wife is just so heartbreaking. Probably one of the most heartbreaking scenes I have seen on this show. You can see the sadness in him. You see how much it hurts, to lose his wife, the love of his life, and for what, and I mean, he just breaks down. He really does, and it's a very sad thing to see Opie this way. A man who was dedicated to the club, who did a lot of things for the club, and yet his wife ends up dead. His family's basically torn apart, and it's very sad to see it. And Hale basically gives Stahl the dirty look and says, "Told you this is what was going to happen," and I don't know if Stahl necessarily felt remorse over it or not. I mean, it just is the way it is. I think part of her did. Part of her also realized, hey, it was our best shot at taking down the Suns. And it was just a, very different kind of moment. And then what ends up happening is the very end of the episode, you get the montage where basically Opie's, in his bed crying. You have Clay basically remorseful over, what happened. When he finds out what happened, he basically he's like devastated in his own right because he knows he effed up, he made a mistake. And, Unser even told Clay, like, yeah, it looks like, Donna was killed instead of Opie. Like, he basically throws it back at Clay's face, like, he knows what happened. He knows the whole entire truth. So, you have that, and then you have Tara alone in bed, and then Jax ends up sleeping with Wendy again. And I think that mostly was just because it was a rough day. He was definitely full of sadness, and he wanted something to take his mind off of the pain of losing a good friend. Because, Opie and Jax are best friends. I mean, Donna definitely meant a lot to Opie. I mean, meant a lot to Jax just as much as she did to Opie. And I think it was just, because he just needed something to clear his mind. He needed something to distract him, which, sometimes making love can do that. You have a hectic day and, life is crappy, so maybe you take time to do something pleasurable rather than, focus on the thing. That's why a lot of people during the Great Depression went to the movies. It's like you go to the movies, you forget about the depressing life you have outside of it. Same thing like even today, Sometimes you watch an hour of TV and you forget all the bad things that happen in your life, or you make love, or you go for a drive. Just things that they do. And that was why I think Jax did that. Not necessarily because he's saying, oh, well, it's me and Wendy now. It was mostly, I think, just as a distraction. But definitely a great episode. Definitely was. Sleep of Babies is probably one of my favorite episodes. You hate to say that, but just storyline wise, it sets up so much. It's so impactful. It's so devastating. And it really is a great written episode that really has a big impact for almost the rest of the series. So I really liked it. And I want to thank everybody again for watching. I'm going to bring this to a close. Again, feel free to leave comments. Feel free to leave questions, video topics. I will give you credit for any that you leave. Feel free to subscribe and feel free to tell your friends. We're all counting down to Sons of Anarchy. We're waiting for it patiently, and it's going to be here soon. And I'm really excited about it. It's about time that it comes back. You miss it when it goes away in the fall. And I think it's going to be one heck of a final season. I really think so. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful day.